The Legend of Zelda series is full of memorable moments, as we're sure all of you fans out there are quite aware of.
We feel that now is the time for us to share our most memorable moments and experiences that we've had with this wonderful video game series.
Why is it the time? Well, that's because the very first Legend of Zelda game was released for the Famicom in Japan back in 1986, which means that this year is the Legend of Zelda series' 30th anniversary.
And not only that, during the 25th anniversary of the series, which is now 5 years ago, we decided to start up our channel, which means that this year also marks our 5th anniversary as the owners of Triforce. Holy sh**.
And not only that, this video will also be our number 201 on our channel, which makes it the 200th one after the old sucky introduction we made back in 2011.
To celebrate these great occasions, as you might know from our earlier announcement, we have decided to release this very long video where we share 10 moments each, meaning that you will now get to hear us talk about 20 moments in total.
Since these moments are really personal and close to each of us, we have been responsible for doing each our own part with each our own moments.
We just have to be clear on what qualifies as a moment for this video. Of course, like many of you probably expected, it can be a cutscene that is very memorable, maybe some kind of accomplishment like defeating a boss, but we also want to count experiences we've had around the game. With that, we mean experiences we've had playing the game with a friend or sibling or something similar. It doesn't necessarily have to be something directly from the game.
If you don't know what we mean by that, just watch the video and we'll explain everything as well as we can.
So sit back, relax, and we hope you will enjoy these 20 amazing moments we've had with the Legend of Zelda series. We're the owners of Triforce. I'm owner 1.
And I'm owner 2, and let us share with you each our top 10 lists of our memorable moments. I am starting off my list with a very recent memory from Skyward Sword. As usual with me, I'm very slow on finishing games I've already started. I usually play for some time and almost never comes back to it. This was a very wrong decision I made in Skyward Sword. I had gotten pretty far into the game before I decided to take a little break from it and play something else. Months passed and I hadn't touched the game since. When Owner 1 convinced me that it was time to play through the game, I found out that I had missed one of the most memorable endings in a Zelda game. The ending scene in Skyward Sword. Zelda being happy that everything is over and crying really got to me. The little joke Groose makes to lighten the mood up a bit, saying he would call this the Legend of Groose. Seeing Link react as Fi tells him to drive the sword into its pedestal again for her to return to a sleep without end. To me, Fi is a really annoying companion in Skyward Sword. But this ending scene made me reconsider her a bit. She's still a very annoying companion, as she's pretty much without emotions throughout the game, but she kind of expressed real feelings in the end. She started this whole quest based on serving her grace, as she says, then going over to say that the time she spent with Link is the most precious data she has recorded, saying she's feeling something she has never experienced before, and concluding that it is happiness. And in the end, she is saying thank you to Link. Zelda meeting Impa again when going back to the original time, and Impa suddenly dissolving and disappearing was also a bit sad, with Groose crying in the background. This whole ending scene was a very sad moment in the whole game, with so many feelings coming from the characters at once, but also a happy moment since everything was finally over. Even though it is both a sad and a happy moment, it stuck with me as a very memorable moment from Skyward Sword.
Skyward Sword surely has been a mixed bag for most people. Some people love it, some really don't, and others might just be somewhere in between. I, for one, like the game. I had a tiny few problems with it, but all in all, I think Skyward Sword is a great game. I really do enjoy it, and it has a lot of things I really love about it. It has great dungeons and great bosses, for instance, and you all know how much we love Collectos, right? I also like the upgrading system and gathering materials and stuff, so there's a lot for me to enjoy. Another thing I really loved was Skyloft. I liked the area, I liked the society and the people living there. It had fun side quests, fun interactions with different characters. And if there's one really memorable moment for me from this game, and from Skyloft in particular, it's the very beginning where we get to meet Zelda. Seriously, Link and Zelda's relationship in this game is adorable. Seeing the two of them so close together was so refreshing, and all the interactions they had really made me hope for them to officially be a couple. But Zelda had to tease us, and for that I sort of hate Nintendo, but it's so darn cute nonetheless. I like the whole beginning here, all the way until she's kidnapped or, you know, taken away, or whatever. But if there's just one moment in particular that's really memorable to me, it's just when Link finds Zelda for the first time. The moment she turns around, when she asks about her outfit, all this is so well done. And of course, the music! This slow, romantic music playing in the background makes it all so beautiful. And I even got to time the music greatly by luck, with her twirl the first time I played this. Here, take a look! So yeah, number 10 is Link and Zelda from Skyward Sword. So adorable.
When I was young, I was afraid of the dark. I was once visiting my friend's cottage. I brought my Game Boy Color with me and Link's Awakening DX. Both me and my friend were huge Nintendo fans and both owned a Game Boy. We had a great time and I did enjoy my time being there. But when it was bedtime and everyone else was asleep, I was wide awake. I had this weird imagination where I thought I heard sounds and other noises, which prevented me from falling asleep. This is where Link's Awakening DX comes into play. I had a portable lamp I could attach to my Game Boy Color, since you know, the screen on that thing wasn't really useful in the dark. Not really sure where and how I got it, but I had it, which was amazing. I booted up the game and loaded my save file. That was when I heard the amazing soundtrack in the mysterious forest. Being in this forest really made me feel braver. Suddenly I went from being scared, hearing all these sounds and noises, to being brave and ignored everything else, just from that moment of hearing the mysterious forest soundtrack. As I said, this was when I was young, so it didn't really take much to make me feel okay again. I was really both easily scared and easily amused, but this moment was really memorable to me. Mostly since I wasn't in my own home, where I felt safe. I was at my friend's cottage, playing Link's Awakening DX. I have very fond memories of this game, since this is the Zelda game I mostly remember from being young, before Ocarina of Time came out. I can't really remember much from the time I played A Link to the Past while I was young, but this moment, the mysterious forest soundtrack, and the forest in general, have to be the most memorable moment from this game.
For the first, but definitely not the last time on this list, we are going to Ocarina of Time. It has tons of memorable moments, as I'm sure many of you have experienced too. For number 9, we are going to the dreaded Water Temple. You might expect me to talk about something really negative since we're entering this place, but I am here to talk about something much more positive. And what is the most positive thing in the Water Temple? Dark Link, of course. So we have already talked about this battle in our previous top 10, so I won't go much into details here. This battle is amazing. Fighting a dark version of yourself that mirrors your moves in a surreal, atmospheric environment like this is awesome. I can't really remember my first encounter with this miniboss since I have faced him so many times since the late 90s or maybe early 2000s. I don't remember when I reached this place for the first time. But there is one encounter against him I remember well. As we have said before, we have played every Zelda game together, and when we played this game, I was the one to do the Water Temple and fight Dark Link. And I didn't go for any tricks, no Din's Fire, no Megaton Hammer, no Big Goron Sword. Just me, with the Master Sword, taking on Dark Link. And it was such an intense fight! I tried using the targeting a lot, I tried a lot without it, and I just tried to keep it as high-paced as possible. I swung my sword like crazy. He blocked many of my attacks, but once in a while, I hit him, and he hit me. It was tense, it was fast-paced, and it was exciting. I was close to dying, but I managed to stay alive in the end, without fairies or potions. It was a tough battle, but so much fun, and definitely a memorable encounter to me.
I mostly explained in my previous entry that I was very easily scared when I was young. This also carries over to this entry. When I first played Majora's Mask, I remember the moment when Link got turned into a Deku scrub. I thought to myself, is Link stuck in this form now? Do I have to play as a Deku scrub for the rest of the game? That's not really the case, as I learned later in the game. Anyway, when you got far enough into the intro, you met the happy mask salesman. He offered you to cure the curse the Skull Kid put on you, but you had to get something for him. Sure? Okay. I'll get what you need, as long as I can play as Link again. You know how this turns out. You return to him without the item he asked you to get, but he was kind enough to keep his promise to remove the curse. So he did it, and you got transformed back to Link. But you also got a new item, the Deku mask. This is where the me being easily scared part comes in. As much as I wanted to play as Link, I had to try out this new item. So I equipped it on one of my C buttons and pressed it. The horrifying moment of Link putting on the mask wrapping itself onto his face, and seeing Link screaming as he gets transformed into the Deku Scrub again. Putting on a mask for the first time in Majora's Mask scared me so much. I didn't really know that you could skip the animation when putting on a mask, so I had to endure the horrifying moment of putting on a mask for the entirety of the game. But even though it scared me, it got stuck in my mind as a really cool new mechanic in the Zelda series. You could transform into different races that you had met before in previous games. You have the Deku Scrub, the Goron, which is the best one by the way, and the Sora. This was amazing. So again, a bit similar to the previous entry, but this one mostly stuck to me as a memorable moment with both the scary aspect and the awesome aspect by transforming into different races in the Zelda universe.
A Link to the Past was the very first Zelda game I ever played, but even so, there are many moments in that game I saw through my brothers' or my neighbors' playthroughs, so a few things were sort of spoiled for me. And I have played the game countless times later, which has made me remember more recent playthroughs a bit more, when every moment was already known to me. However, there is one moment, or maybe two, we'll talk about that later, that still sticks to me, and that is when you enter Hyrule Castle in the beautiful world of Hyrule, defeat Ganon, and he drags you to the Dark World. I sort of knew that the game was longer than the Light World alone, since I had seen other people play it before I reached this point on my own, but I can't imagine what people felt the first time they discovered this. I have to say though, even if I knew about the Dark World, I wasn't aware of how many new dungeons there were, and that's what I loved. I had completed 3 dungeons plus Hyrule Castle in the Light World, to then discover 7 new ones in the Dark World, in addition to the final dungeon. Getting here on top of the pyramid with a dark background, and everything looking so strange and almost twisted, was quite the sight. When I add the fact that this is the place we hear one of my favorite pieces of music in the series, the Dark World theme, it surely made this moment a memorable one to me.
Ocarina of Time was the game I played most during the Nintendo 64 era. I have so many fond memories from that game. I played it both alone and with my friends. This particular memory is from me playing this game with a friend of mine. He also had a Nintendo 64 but didn't own Ocarina of Time. When I visited him, I made sure to bring Ocarina of Time so we could play it. The first time we played it together, we of course started from the beginning of the game, running around in Kokiri Forest looking for the sword and enough rupees to buy a shield. I mostly knew this from playing it before, but it was still fun since my friend hadn't played it yet. So we finally found the sword and got enough rupees to buy the shield. Now we were heading for the first dungeon in the game, the Great Deku Tree. We convinced Majora that we were ready to enter. We defeated our first enemies on the way and got some new cool items. We talked with the Great Deku Tree and readied ourselves to enter the dungeon. For some reason, I always found it cool the first time I went into the Great Deku Tree, but this time it was special. We entered the dungeon, getting a little sample of what the dungeon looked like. We looked at each other and said, "Let's do this." We were so ready to take on this dungeon. As I said, I had played this before, but I was the one playing when we entered the dungeon. For some reason, it felt like I had never been there before. It felt so fresh and new. This moment really stuck to me since it was so fun playing this game with my friend. We would sometimes start up a new game just to enter the Great Deku Tree again and again. It felt so epic each time we did it.
Twilight Princess, man. This game hyped me to the sky. The early announcement, I didn't know about the E3 2004 moment until a few years back, by the way. But seeing the early images of the, at the time, amazing graphics that I still love to this day, and the delays it got, sure dragged my hype for a great while. But I was happy to finally play it when it came out, and it had so much unique to offer. The Twilight Realm, the Wolf form, the Twilight race with Midna, and the character responsible for number 7 on my list, Zant. As everyone else, and you might know where this is going, I thought Zant was an awesome and cold-blooded villain. All the way through the game, he built up his character as a powerful, evil being that would go to any length to reach his goal. This usurper looked dangerous, and he still sort of was, but he wasn't exactly the cold-blooded villain as we thought he would be. When Link and Midna confronts him in his palace, things start to change, and that very moment he twists his body while explaining his motifs, this very moment is when I understood that he was different from what he depicted himself as, and built up his reputation to be. He twirls, bends backwards and all that, and I was left speechless. I loved the cutscenes we got to see when he explains he found a god that turned out to be Ganondorf. I thought all of that was absolutely awesome. But this is about moments, and that moment when he twisted his body like that was the most memorable moment to me. I think I explained my reaction well enough in the top 10 weirdest characters video. In that weird twist, my face went all WTF, and I just couldn't understand what was going on. He clearly wasn't as cool as we all thought after all.
So, I've already been through one of my memorable moments from Majora's Mask, but that certainly wasn't the last. To start this one off, I have to say that this was one of the first games of the 2 on Nintendo 64 that I actually finished on my own. It was actually an awesome adventure, going from Clock Town to Woodfall Temple, to getting the Goron mask and entering the Snowhead Temple was really cool. Obtaining the Sora mask and infiltrating the Pirate's Fortress was really great. Even finishing the Great Bay Temple and taking down Georg was an achievement for me at that time. Entering Icana Canyon, taking down the mini-boss known as Eagle's Duikana, and taking on the Stone Tower Temple, defeating Twinmold was epic. But there was one thing that was really memorable to me, and that was the final battle, Majora. Fighting Majora for the first time was really awesome to me. You started off with Majora's mask, which you had seen during your first visit at the top of the clock tower, with Skull Kid attached to it, but this time you fought the mask on its own. No Skull Kid, just the mask. This was epic. When I thought I had beaten him, he suddenly reappears as Majora's incarnation. This actually freaked me out a bit. The weird movements he had, the music playing in the background, seeing him move so fast, but at the same time, it was really cool. The mask had grown arms, legs and a tiny eye above the mask. I wasn't really sure what I was fighting, but I had a great time. Then, it suddenly got serious again. It was now time to take on Majora's Wrath. This one freaked me out more than the previous one. Majora's incarnation was more funny and weird, which I couldn't really understand at that time. But Majora's Wrath was a serious one. The mask was now his body armor. He grew bigger muscles, got more skin on his arms and legs, and grew a head. But he also looked freaking awesome. He now had 2 whips as his weapons and went total maniac against you. When everything was all over, it felt so epic. A 3-phase boss fight, and I had endured through all of it. This was certainly one great memorable moment in Majora's Mask.
Wind Waker was always a good game to me. It's not among my very favorites, but I always liked it, and even the art style. You see, I never saw that Space World 2000 thing with Link and Ganondorf, so I was never teased by that, and from my knowledge, both the entire game and art style of Wind Waker turned out to be what was always the intention. Finding info on unreleased games back then wasn't really that easy. Anyway, Wind Waker is a fun game, but not entirely as memorable to me as a few other games in the series. There is one moment I'll always remember though, and that is what's hidden underneath the sea. In this game, all Hyrule is flooded, and what's strange is that even though there is so much water in this game, both outside and in a few instances inside places, you could never dive underwater. I noticed this, so I never thought that we would actually go to the bottom of the sea. Well, we did, and what we found there was very interesting. We got to enter Hyrule Castle to find the Master Sword, but the place seemed to have lost its time. Everything was grey, the water outside didn't flow, and there were moblins and darknuts all around inside, but none of them could move. And the music, it all felt so surreal, even eerie. Not only was everything under the sea, but even time was left behind for this place. This all changes as soon as you pick up the Master Sword, but it was such a contrast reaching this place, coming from the huge, colorful surface to the grey, forgotten castle on the bottom. Everything around this, like finding the Master Sword and seeing the sages from Ocarina of Time in the windows around the pedestal, and even the ancestors of the pirate crew in the picture on the wall, was very interesting. But the most memorable moment was just taking my first steps into this place, and see what the old kingdom had become until the Master Sword was removed from its pedestal.
This one is a really funny story to me, and certainly a memorable one. Me and my family was at this electronics store outside of our town, just taking a look, seeing if any new games had come out. Then we saw on the shelf a game called Zelda Collector's Edition for the GameCube. It had 4 games in it, in one disc. The 4 games were Zelda 1, Zelda 2, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask. There was also some promotional stuff on there for Wind Waker, which was the next big Zelda game at the time. There were a bunch of them on the shelf, but there wasn't any price tag on them. We found one of the employees there and asked for a price on the game. He kindly answered with, "Well, those aren't actually supposed to be there. These are supposed to be in a bundle pack for the Nintendo GameCube. But since we made the error of putting these on the shelf, you can have one." That was awesome of them. We got to buy the game even though it wasn't supposed to be sold outside of the bundle pack. I was really excited. There were 2 games on there I had already played on the Nintendo 64, but there were also 2 new games I had never played before. We got home quickly and I instantly opened the cover, took out the little mini CD, those CDs were awesome by the way, and put it into our GameCube. I was greeted with the standard GameCube startup music. Then, when that was done, the game loaded up and I was greeted with the awesome select your game screen from the game. I was so excited, going through the different menus from Zelda 1 to Majora's Mask, checking out the promotional stuff for Wind Waker, just having a great time on the freaking starting screen. But there was something I hadn't noticed on the cover for the game, which was a 20-minute demo for Wind Waker. Before anything else, I instantly booted up the demo to try out Wind Waker for the first time. Oh my god, was I excited for that game after those 20 minutes. I also tried out Zelda 1 and Zelda 2 for the first time, but to be fair, those 2 games were far too difficult for me at that time. I enjoyed playing Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, beside from the demo, which I played to death. Awesome moment.
I have my own fond memories of Majora's Mask. I never completed the game until I played this with Owner 2 back in 2011, but I remember trying it out back in the early 2000s. The thing is, I kept hearing in recent years prior to our full playthrough that this game was super emotional with all the different side quests and characters you would meet in the 3 days before the moon crashes into Clock Town, but I never really felt that way myself. I said I hadn't completed the game until 5 years ago, but I had played it a lot by myself and with another friend. I never got past Snowhead Temple though, and I often spent my time having fun around the Clock Town because I absolutely loved the time mechanics. I loved that the postman was out on his route at 9 AM, and that the only door open at night at Stockpot Inn was on the 2nd floor, which shouldn't be reachable for regular guests. I had so much fun playing the minigames, collect rupees and put them in a bank, and just be a citizen or something like that. I did get to know a lot of characters, but I didn't really care all that much about them. I tried letting the moon destroy everything, I heard the music playing during the final hours, but it didn't really scare me, and it didn't really reach out to me, so I didn't find it as emotional as everyone else. However, things changed a bit when we played this together. We tried doing a few side quests, and we went through with one that I had never done before, which is of course the side quest with Anju and Kafei. We went through the details, we witnessed all the things with the different characters involved, and we interacted with them. We learned so much more about the characters in the game, and after finally retrieving the mask for Kafei and the time started closing in, I started to feel it. This time, I was directly involved with a very touching side quest. And while waiting for Kafei to finally reunite with his fiancée, I talked to other characters. While the sad music playing and the world is rumbling as the moon gets closer and closer, I talked to the guards who look up at the moon while telling me to run away. A stubborn guy who calls everyone cowards. The banker who asks if I haven't evacuated yet. People are aware and they react in different ways. I noticed that people were scared and others happy that they could go to live another day. Though, in the end, Anju and Kafei finally reunites. Kafei being cursed or not, they would be together and stay together, while telling me to take refuge, as they will, to use their words, greet the morning, together. These two people, this side quest, turned everything around for me. Now I finally understood why people found it so emotional, why people would think it was their favorite game in the series, and why people think it has the best side quests in the series. This moment will definitely stay with me.
Back to Ocarina of Time. I have already talked about my moment from the beginning of the game and going into the Great Deku Tree for the first time. Really awesome moment for me in Ocarina of Time. But there was also another moment very early in the game that stuck to me and actually gives me a little smile to this day. So I finished the Great Deku Tree and had taken down Goma, the first boss in the game. I was now heading into Hyrule Field, but no, this isn't the moment, even though it was really grand entering Hyrule Field for the first time. I went into the market in Hyrule Castle Town and spent some time there before figuring out what to do. I visited Princess Zelda and got the information from her and learned a new song on my awesome ocarina, a gift from Saria. I was sent to Kakariko village and was told to enter Death Mountain to find the second spiritual stone. So I headed there, showed the princess's letter to the guard, and he kindly complied and opened the gate for me. I made my way up to the Goron city. Entering this place instantly put a smile on my face. Hearing the music and seeing the Gorons who lived there was really cool. So I wandered around a bit inside this awesome city until I figured out that I had to play Zelda's lullaby to open the door into Darunia's room. I talked with this huge buff guy who was really angry. Long story short, I figured out that I had to get Saria's song and got that one after traveling through the Lost Woods. Went back to Darunia and played the song for him. Here comes the awesome, memorable moment to me. This huge, buff, angry Goron suddenly got the biggest smile on his face and started dancing like there was no tomorrow. He went on dancing and saying words like, "Oh, oh, come on, what a hot beat, yeah," and ending it with a loud, "Yahoo!" I laughed so much when I saw this and read the text. He went from being really angry to really happy just because of this song. You guys know how much I love Gorons, and everything started with this moment right here.
Next up is another emotional one, but not exactly in the same way. We're going back to Twilight Princess and what might just be the most memorable moment to me from this game. You see, I'm a person who loves seeing returns of things. I don't want things to be repeating a lot, but with things like the Zelda series, I love seeing either a character, perhaps a boss, or just something from an older game make a return. For example, in this game, I loved seeing the 4 pose and Arbiter's grounds that refers back to the Forest Temple in Ocarina of Time. I loved seeing Ganondorf make his return in this game in the cutscene next to the broken mirror of Twilight. However, no matter how cool these moments were, none of these were as memorable or surprising as the one I'm getting to now. After finding the first missing fragment of the Mirror of Twilight in the Snowpeak ruins, we are guided back to the Sacred Grove where we found the Master Sword, to find the second missing one. The area is talked about as an ancient temple, and you can clearly see the ruins of it. This game was already pretty similar to Ocarina of Time, and I may have assumed that this was actually the Temple of Time, because the structure is very similar, and after all, this is where the Master Sword was. But even if I really assumed this or not back then, I can't really remember, because what I do remember is that I certainly was not expecting to walk through this strange portal to both see, or especially hear, what I was about to. As soon as I heard the exact same music used in the Temple of Time from Ocarina of Time, it was as if, seriously, no pun intended, as if time stood still. I was hit with the most nostalgic feeling I might have ever felt. I was in a trance, and I just sat there in front of my TV, frozen, and just taking these feelings in. The feeling of hearing the Song of Time, a melody I have always loved, and not even a remix of it. It was the exact same music piece, and it sounded so beautiful and so fitting with this new, fresher look of the Temple of Time. I didn't say a word, I was just mesmerized, and it instantly turned into a moment I will never forget.
I already explained on my 6th entry that Majora's Mask was the first Zelda game on the Nintendo 64 I actually beat myself. So this entry might confuse someone, but I will explain why it's here. So, I never really finished Ocarina of Time when I played it when I was young. I mostly started out a new save file and got to around Jabba Jabba's belly before I actually gave up. That dungeon was way too confusing for me for some reason. My brother, however, had already finished the game 100%. He got all the heart pieces, all the Skulltulas, all the items and so on. I sometimes played on his file to just mess around a bit in this big world, since there wasn't much else to do. I had played on his file many times, but there was one time where I had been in Ganon's tower and saved and quit the game there. I booted up the game, went into his file and started inside Ganon's tower. I had never seen this place before. It was so huge. There were all these rooms I could go into. I entered some of them, but didn't really know what to do. Since my brother had already completed the game, the tower in the middle of the room was already open. I looked into the opening, walked over the little bridge and went into the tower. When I entered this room, I was greeted by some enemies and a staircase. This is something I will never forget. I started moving up the stairs, hearing some faint music coming from the top, I guessed. There were also these rooms where some strong enemies were as well, which you had to kill to get further up the tower. As I went further up the stairs, the music got louder. The rooms with the stairs changed a bit as well, which I thought was really cool. The music got louder and louder, and when I got near the top, I could hear the music clearly. Someone was playing on an organ. I didn't really know who it was, since I never dared to enter the big door on the top of the stairs, in case I ruined something for my brother. This was a really memorable moment for me. I never entered, but the suspense and excitement I felt from walking up the stairs while hearing the music get louder and louder was really satisfying.
Alright, back to Ocarina of Time. This game, again, is full of memorable moments to me. I still have fond memories when I borrowed this game from my neighbor, the same neighbor I mentioned about A Link to the Past, and I was allowed to create my own save file. I was only maybe 7 or 8 years old back then, so I wasn't all that good, and didn't get really far at such a young age. That's why it was so exciting to me that I had access to each of the save files belonging to my neighbors that were already on the cartridge. One of them had only beaten the Forest Temple, and just to add another tiny memorable moment, Walking out of the Temple of Time and seeing the darkness around was very special, but that fiery cloud on top of Death Mountain was awesome to see as well. The other brother, the one who actually owned the game, had completed everything. The thing was, they had both found the Master Sword and traveled 7 years into the future. In real life, they were both much older than me, so they were pretty good at the game. Me, myself, I remember being stuck and lost when I had to find Princess Rudo's letter in the bottle in Lake Hylia, so I didn't advance for a great while, while these two had reached the whole of the chapter in the game. So, when it was finally time for me to find the damn bottle and wait the hour it took for the Zora King to move his ass and rid Jabu Jabu of this bioelectric anemone, I could also go to the Temple of Time and get the Master Sword. Pulling the sword from the stone is a huge moment in this game for multiple reasons. You had now collected the spiritual stones and played the Song of Time to open the sealed doors leading to the sword that can destroy all evil. You had reached it, which is a big moment in itself. But it's also because of the huge twist that this leads to, because now, Ganondorf had access to the Sacred Realm, and he has taken control over Hyrule. However, none of this mattered much to me. I already knew there was more to the game, even if I didn't know exactly what. I was too young to really care about the story, and I didn't completely understand what made the Master Sword so important. To me, the moment wasn't about getting the Blade of Evil's Bane, or that Ganondorf came to ruling the land. It was about me. Finally growing up. When I was this young, I always looked up to my neighbor whom I borrowed the game from. I looked up to my own brothers. I wanted to be like them, like I'm sure most of, if not all of you, have wanted to be to your close ones too. And by pulling the sword from its pedestal, not only did Link actually age and become 7 years older, but I had also reached the same chapter as my neighbors had on their save files. Just like Link now became an adult, I felt the same way, despite only being around the age of 8. Young Link becoming adult Link was a perfect symbol for me on how great I felt for finally reaching a point in the game where I felt I was on the same level as the ones older than me. It was an amazing feeling, and I'll never forget it.
This moment is really important to me and is mostly the reason why I love Spirit Tracks so much. Me and my brother were going to an electronics store here in our town to check out if they got any new games. We looked around a bit and then my brother showed me this game for the Nintendo DS called The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks. I looked at the game and didn't really understand what it was about. All I saw from the cover was that Link was on a train and Zelda was some kind of ghost or something, so I wasn't really sure if it was worth it or not. My brother asked me if he should buy it or not, and I said that we should check out something else first, see if we found any other games we could buy. But no matter what we found, we both actually wanted to try the game out. It was a Zelda game, why shouldn't we buy it and try it out? So I told my brother that we should get it and play it when we got home, and that's what we did. My brother bought the game and we went home. He got his DS, got the game out and put it into it. We started it up and was really stunned by the title theme, but a bit confused at the same time. The title theme was awesome, but how did this game work? Why was Link going around on a train? So we just had to start a new game and see what was going on in this adventure. We both played it for a while and we really did enjoy the game. We got to know how it worked, what was going on, and ventured into some awesome temples. I must say though, I didn't really like to play any games with my brothers at this time. I enjoyed playing my games alone or with friends. This was actually the first time in a very long time that I enjoyed playing a game with my brother. If he got stuck, I would try and find the answer to the puzzle or where we should go next. If I got stuck, he would do the same. We were working as a team to beat this game. We played it non-stop for the whole day and did not regret it at all. The insane part is that we actually completed the game the same day we bought it. We got to the end and fought the final boss that same day. When we defeated him and the game ended, I gave my brother a high five and we talked about how cool the game was. As I said in the beginning of this entry, this was a really important moment to me, by seeing how fun it actually was to play a game with my brother again, and I have Spirit Tracks to thank for that. This is definitely the moment that made me love Spirit Tracks as much as I do today, out of the two Zelda DS games.
We're going back to A Link to the Past and we're actually returning to the Dark World once again. This time though, We're actually going further back to a more memorable moment than the one when I first reached the Dark World myself. As I have said, this was the first Zelda game I had played, and I played it years before Ocarina of Time. I also mentioned earlier that I had already seen some of the things in the Dark World from other people's playthroughs. But the memorable moment I'm getting at here is the one I had myself when I had my first glimpse of the Dark World. Yes, the moment before you enter the Tower of Hera. You receive the magic mirror from the lost old man while he tells you to look into it if you'd ever walk into a magical transporter. I thought, what the hell does that mean? Well, not really, because I didn't care much about the dialogue when I was around the age of 4, 5 or 6 or whatever my age was. Either way, I would soon find out what was ahead of me. Before you reach the Tower of Hera, you find one of these magical transporters. But what would happen? Well, you take your first steps into the Dark World. And there are so many strange things going on. The first thing is that Link has turned into a bunny. That's, of course, really weird. But more things have changed. The ground is much darker, the music is different, you hear wind and thunder, and there's some ugly looking guy punting a pink ball with eyes and legs around. All of these things are really, really strange. But that's not what I remember most about this little glimpse of this world covered in darkness. No, my most memorable moment is when I first moved to the north wall here and seeing this huge building that's blinking with different colors. When you're very young, colors can be very interesting to you. And here there was this giant building blinking with light in different colors, and I was so very interested in seeing more of what this building could be. Sadly, I couldn't reach it. There was no way for me to climb up or get there while being in this strange world, and I could only enter the other tower that stood there in the light world. Back in those days, I would never get to enter that huge, exciting looking building. Even if I played on a completed save file, the tower would still stand there, but it wasn't blinking anymore, which would be disappointing. Either way, when it comes to memorable moments, this might be the oldest one I still have. Just seeing this huge spectacle that I was never able to reach back then.
I was never really a fan of Twilight Princess when it first came out. Not because it was a bad game, but because I was bad at the game and never got past the freaking cat in the beginning. You had to get a fish for the cat, which I didn't understand how to get, so I quit the game early. I didn't even get to the first temple. Fast forward some years and I started playing it again. I got really far into the game, but had my stops here and there, mostly because I'm used to play a bit of one game and not touch it in a long time. When me and Owner1 talked about starting this channel, we agreed to play every Zelda game there was. So this was the perfect opportunity to play through Twilight Princess, since I couldn't really just play a bit and not play it again. Owner1 had already played through the game, of course, but I hadn't. So we played through it, got past a lot of awesome dungeons and places I would have never seen if it wasn't for us playing through the game. We finally got to the last dungeon, Hyrule Castle. We fought our way through this dungeon and found Ganondorf. This was a 4-phase fight, which was awesome in itself. First phase was Puppet Zelda, which was your standard dead man's volley, with a little twist since it was Zelda after all. Then there was Beast Ganon, who looked insane. He was huge. Not the easiest fight, but we got through that one as well. Next one was Ganondorf riding on his horse, while Link and Zelda also rode on their horse, Epona. This was one awesome fight. You got to fight Ganondorf while riding on your horse. Not the most complex phase of this battle, but it was certainly awesome. Then, when that was over, it was time to duel Ganondorf, one-on-one with only your sword. I had always thought that it would be so amazing to fight Ganondorf in a sword battle, and I wasn't wrong. It was one amazing fight. Ganondorf locked Link and himself inside this circle thing, and it was on. It was Link versus the Dark Lord Ganondorf. Although I must say the fight was fairly easy, it still was pretty epic. It was something I had looked forward to for many years, and it was worth the wait. It was quickly over, but the satisfaction from the fight lasted a very long time. This is my most memorable moment from the Legend of Zelda series.
For my most memorable moment from the Zelda series, we have to go back to, you guessed it, Ocarina of Time once again. So I've already told you that I used to borrow my neighbor's cartridge to play this game, but I never got to complete it with that cartridge. A few years later, I played this game together with another friend. Yeah, this was years before I met Owner 2. So we played this all the way through, and I remember reaching Ganon's castle. We were stuck there for a great while, but kept making progress. Step by step, we cleared out each of the wings representing the 6 different temples and medallions. We ascended higher up in the castle, fought the enemies we encountered, even the Iron Knuckles we used to be afraid of touching since they never started moving before we struck them. All of this was an amazing experience, as we got closer and closer to Ganondorf. I remember my friend saying, "Ganondorf is the one playing the organ, you know, the music you hear right now." And I was like, "What? Pfft, no, that can't be." Well, turned out he was right, and we were excited about battling him. The thing was, we couldn't beat him. We always managed to strike the energy ball back at him to stun him, but we never knew what to do next. He'd just keep hovering, and then gain back control of his body just a few seconds later. We had absolutely no idea how to beat him. We died, we tried again. We died, and we tried again. I can't remember if we tried a whole lot of different items or not, but I remember us not being able to beat him that day. We had to give up because I had to go home. And suddenly, the next day, he calls me.
"You gotta come over! I beat Ganondorf, but I'm too scared to do anything!"
I was so shocked to hear that he had defeated him, but also a bit disappointed that he did it without me. Anyway, I was glad he called, because when I came over, I got to experience my most memorable moment in the series yet. While I had been gone, he had somehow figured out to use the light arrows, which apparently never occurred to us the day before. He escaped from the collapsing castle and made it safely to the outside with Zelda, and witnessed the whole building fall in ruins. But because of that one sound that startled Zelda and made Link focused, he decided to call me because he was afraid of taking the next step alone. Neither one of us knew what would happen next. As I sat next to him, he moved closer to the ruins in the middle. A wall of fire separates Link from Zelda, and Ganondorf comes blasting out from under the ruins. This was an intense moment to us, and I will never forget the absolute awesomeness we were witnessing. The music starts, lightning strikes through the skies, it's amazingly dark, as this human uses his Triforce of power to transform into Ganon. I especially remember how freaking cool it looked when those 2 giant swords just form into his hands. This battle has an absolutely amazing atmosphere, but that very moment we both sat there, seeing this huge monster shape up right in front of us, was such an exciting and intense moment to us. After this long journey we had together, and all the struggling we did with Ganondorf himself the day before, it turned out it was all worth it. I'm glad we got to share this, as it was a fantastic moment to end it all, and of course not to mention a very memorable one. The most memorable moment to me in the Legend of Zelda series.
Whoa, that was a long journey down memory lane. We really hope you liked these moments we shared with you, because we have put a lot of effort into this, and we always wanted to make this a great video to share with you. Now it's your turn to share with us. What are your most memorable moments from the series? Leave it in the comments, and of course throw us a like if you enjoyed our personal experiences.
And don't forget to subscribe, because now that this huge video of 20 moments is over, we have to make a video that's a tiny bit simpler, with the next countdown being the top 5 shop themes. Thank you so much for watching, both this video and after these 5 years we've had with our channel. We really appreciate it, and we definitely hope to see you again.